Well, let's kick this off here. I know we've got all right, looks like 2:25 is what we've got to through the end. So, good afternoon. Sorry I wasn't able to be here this morning. We were busy picking up the food out at the restaurant. If you don't know, and actually even today's lunch will kind of play into this workshop. The food came from a restaurant called El Dorado. It's out in Alt, where High Plains Harvest is. If you don't know where Alt is, it's about 400 miles east of Fort Collins, almost right to the Kansas. No, it's just 15 miles. So we were busy doing the food here this morning. So sounds like I was told by Eric that Aaron, quote, preached the paint off the walls this morning. So hopefully you recorded that message, because I want to hear that one. So if I haven't met you yet, my name is Mark Hotaling. I'm the pastor out at High Plains Harvest Church out in Alt, just east of Fort Collins. We were a church plant about 5 years ago now, a little over 5 years, off of Mountain View Community Church. That's where Stephanie and I plugged in after coming home from the military. We plugged into, God brought us to High Plains, ended up going through their training program there and being named as a pastor and then sent as a church planter. So what I want to talk about today is, and the title is Reaching the Culture with the Gospel. And Aaron and I have been talking the last several weeks, and I just kind of wanted to drive a few points home, maybe raise up a few points in your mind or your heart. I'm not here to tell you how to church plant. Even though I'm on my first church plant and I'm 5 years into it, I'm not here to tell you how to church plant, because if there's one thing I've learned in the last 5 years, it's that every church plant is a little bit different. But I did want to share with you, I think, some principles that I think should go across really any plant, even maybe an overseas plant, but also share with you just some real practical nuts and bolts stuff that we have tried and failed, and sought the Lord on how to do it properly, and He's been gracious in showing us how to do that. So High Plains, like I said, we were planted from Mountain View just over 5 years ago, and in the process of the church plant and the church plant team coming together, and let me just pause here real quick. Maybe you're part of a church plant team right now. Maybe you're part of Redemption going out the door. Maybe you're contemplating church planting. Man, should I ever be a part of this in the future physically, or should I be supporting it? Maybe you're part of a church that was planted some time ago. I think all of this still plays into how we think about ministry and the calling that God has on our lives. But when I went through Pastors Institute at Mountain View, and I really didn't, I knew that I was supposed to serve Him full time. That would be my life's calling. That would be my vocation. I had no idea what that would look like, and it wasn't until the last semester of Pastors Institute, when they started focusing really in on calling, did Stephanie and I learn from the Lord that we were to be church planters. And to be honest, we had the thought that because all the models that we had seen in church planting was sell your house and move to a major city, possibly a college town, and that's where you want to plant. And I was really turned on to the rural environment. Eric, I appreciate what he said earlier, and a lot of what I'm going to say, I think it kind of just dovetails off of Eric. So he laid all the solid, awesome theological groundwork. I don't have to do any of that. I'll just tell you what God has done at High Plains. But Eric said, have a passion for your city. For us, it's a region, it's a culture, it's a people group, literally. And I'll be honest with you, I don't have a passion for the city. I don't like the city. My truck does not fit in a single stinking parking space in this town, right? And I drive a diesel truck, and so 90% of the city hates me to begin with. I don't have a passion for the city. Even though I come here 2 or 3 times a week, I have an office in Fort Collins, I just don't have the passion there. And praise the Lord that God does instill that passion in others. At the same time, I know, Aaron doesn't have a passion for, us hicks out in the sticks. Right? He doesn't. And Aaron's what's that? Right. And Aaron and I are literally, we are brothers from another mother. We love each other, and we can razz each other about that. But Stephanie and I had a passion, not just to live in the rural environment because I like to shoot guns and she has horses and all those sorts of things. But God really gave us, we asked for, and He gave us, just like Tom said, He gave us a passion for these people and gave us a passion for a place where nobody's planting churches at all. When we first planted the church, we could count in a 20-mile radius from Alt, actually a little less than that, about 15-mile radius. We could count one church that we could honestly say was preaching the gospel. One. Now, there was lots of churches. There's also a lot of churches that were closed or closing, and a lot of those buildings were turned into people's homes, and a lot of them are sitting vacant right now. But that's really where the passion began. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Practically, what did that look like? Because I think every single one of us, as we go out on the mission, on God's mission to reach people, we really need to think and pray about this. The first thing I want to talk about is just having a missional mindset. And I kind of tag a couple words along with that. A focused passion. At your table, what I want you to do right now is take the word passion and just jot down some words. What is passion? What does what does it make you think of when you hear the word passion? Just take a couple minutes at your table and talk about that. All right, time's up. Let's hear it. Shout them out. What are some words? What does passion make you think of? Motivated. What's that? Happy. Energy. Desire. How about excitement? Enthusiasm. Dedication. Joy. The passion that I believe God wants us to have, and we're going to look in His text here in a minute, is this all-consuming desire. All-consuming. Please, if you're taking notes, jot down those two words. All-consuming desire to reach God's people with God's truth. And that is the gospel. And this passion, it's not something that we conjure up. This passion comes from God Himself. Matthew chapter 9, Jesus said to His disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are..." Right? What's the next one? "Therefore beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into His harvest." Jesus Himself, God Himself, has a passion for the harvest. A passion to reach His people. And so this passion, we have to understand that this passion for reaching people is from God. Therefore, if we are going to step out onto the mission field with passion, then this passion should be God-filled, because that's where it comes from. And I would submit to you that having this passion is absolutely essential in reaching God's people, especially in reaching new people. And when we have this passion, brothers and sisters, this passion is contagious. We come together with like-minded people, and those that God has convicted. And when we as leaders or as co-leaders or as team members, when we are passionate, guess what God uses? He uses that passion to instill that in others as well. When we went to started talking about planting the church, I was sitting on the elder board at Mountain View, and we came up with some plans, right? Man makes the plans, God directs the steps, but we came up with some initial plans on how to start casting the vision, and so the church would understand what was going on. And the church team that came together, and again, every church plant's different, but the church team that came together was completely of God. I was standing in the welcome center, the family center one day, and a young couple came up. They had a couple small children that were in children's ministry. I was the pastor who was overseeing the children's ministry at the time, and I'm writing some sort of announcement to parents on the whiteboard or something, I can't remember. And they walk up and I say, "Hey, how you guys doing?" "Oh, we're doing great." "Hey, what's new in your life?" "Oh, we're selling our house. We put our house on the market." "Great. Where are you guys moving to?" "We're going with you on the church plant." "Really?" "No idea. Haven't been praying for you. Didn't even know you were interested in church planting, but their house is on the market and they're ready to go." The passion was put into them. And as we've gone through the 5 years, Jessica and Tyler are still with us. They're key leaders. Their kids are growing up in the church. We got to baptize their two oldest ones just a few weeks ago. But that passion, God develops it, but He spreads it out through people. When we started High Plains Harvest, we had a passion, everybody, God put it in us, a passion for evangelism. And we studied it, and we trained it. Every single member of the church team was trained in evangelism. Where did that passion come from? Did it come from Mark? No. It came from the Lord, but the church plant leader, he had a passion for that, and that passion was contagious. And let me take just a quick editorial note here that when I talk about evangelism, I'm talking about proclaiming the gospel. Whatever that looks like, whether it's standing on a street corner and shouting it out relationally, one-on-one, in your family, in your friend, whatever, it's evangelism. It's simply that the gospel would be spoken. And a lot of times people hear that word, and when they hear it, they get turned away from evangelism. And I think a lot of times rightly so. Because evangelism, some people have turned it into an argument. A matter of opinion. If I can shout my opinion loud enough, then I will make you a Christian. That's not evangelism. Think about this. Evangelism is not putting forth opinion. It's simply putting forth fact. It's just simply sharing the gospel. It's not an imposition. I like what Mark Deaver said. He said that it can't be called an imposition any more than a pilot can impose his belief on his passengers that the runway is here and not there. So we're not out there to argue opinion. We're simply out there to share God's truth with people who desperately need it. And because we didn't invent this truth, we can't alter it either. But we have this passion for evangelism, and praise the Lord, that passion is still there. How did God instill this passion in us? It came primarily, I think, from us walking town to town, all through the town. We weren't knocking on doors. We were just walking the streets, praying and talking to people. Anybody that was out, it was the summertime, we were talking to people, and we would just simply tell them who we were. Hey, we're Christians, and we're looking at planting a church somewhere in this area. What do you think about if there was a new church here that preached the gospel, that loved Jesus, and the people just wanted to be real and genuine? And it was shocking, the response that we got, especially in one town, in Alton. That's ultimately why we ended up with the church there. But the response, even from non-believers, was, that would be great. That's exactly what this area needs. And so we start, and even the non-believers are saying this to us, and so we come back and we regroup and we say, okay, if the non-believers are telling us this, and we plant a church here, we all have to be able to proclaim the gospel to these people. It's not going to be Mark's job and Mark's job only. God put this passion in us, and to be honest, when we planted, we didn't really know what we were doing. I mean, we read the books, and we went through the boot camps and the training seminars and all of that. I remember Tom Harkis used to call us the prototype plant, right? Because no one had ever planted a rural plant, right, in the network yet. That kind of appealed to me because kind of the rogue guy, but so I embraced that. I don't know if it was a criticism or not. I'm sure it wasn't, but we knew that we were being placed into a foreign land as missionaries. We knew that's where we were going. I'm not going to go into too much into it because I think it sounds like Jeremy's going to really hit on vision. But I want to talk about focus. A lot of times people want to go into church planting and they say, yeah, I want to plant a church. And I want to go wherever the church plant team's going, I'm going. Let me submit to you that I think that church planting requires some focus. At the same time, like I said, we didn't know what we were doing. We had to learn a lot along the way. Ask yourself the question, who does God want you to reach? And not just people, right? But no, specifically, who does God want you to reach? Who do you have a passion for? Who breaks your heart that they're not saved? There's a difference when you look at light. There's a big difference between diffused light and focused light. Diffused light just kind of casts this warm glow over everything, right? But what happens when you focus that light? You can cut steel with focused light. It's called a laser. Now, somewhere in the middle there, I think God wants us, and I know that God wants us to go into His mission trusting, not knowing everything, As he starts to focus that light, though, in your life, and he certainly focuses it for the church plant team, just recognize what he's doing, because he's intending to reach some very, very specific people. The other thing we did in trying to find focus is we did a lot of research. We went out and we did do the factual research stuff, looking at ages and population densities and who works where and medium incomes and, all of this, right? But we did a lot of, in the military we called it human intelligence. We got on the ground and we started talking to people. What do you like? What makes this, this city tick, this county tick, this region? What has gone on here? What's the deal with the fire station? And asking real questions and getting real on the ground intelligence, because a lot of times what you read, actually this goes both ways. A lot of times what you read isn't really what's happening on the ground, and a lot of opinion that you get on the ground isn't backed up by fact. But in exegeting the culture, really ask a lot of questions. And keep in mind, we did all of this 7 months leading up to the church launching with our first public service. Really what we're trying to find out is how do we live in this culture? Scripture calls us ambassadors. Please don't, sometimes I think that word kind of gets glossed over a little bit. And any of you who have spent any time overseas, and especially any time around government, especially the U.S. government, and has seen what an ambassador really does. An ambassador is not, a good ambassador is not one who sits in an office and pushes papers and just goes to functions to get his picture taken with the prime minister or something like that. The ambassador lives in that country, and he interacts with the people. He gets to know them. He learns their language. He eats their food. The ambassador that was killed in Benghazi, part of the reason why he was probably killed is because he was in the culture so much. He knew people, had lots of friends inside of that culture. And being a white American, of course, if you have friends inside of that culture, you're going to automatically make enemies as well. What we're trying to do here, I believe, in this missional mindset is trying to align ourselves, change ourselves to align with the culture that God has called us to. Good friend of mine, good friend of many of yours, Dave DeVries, wrote this. He said, "Missional transformation is a process of discovery that begins when believers recognize their responsibility to align themselves, their passions, their desires, their behaviors, their habits with the missionary purpose of Jesus." That's the mission. That's the missional mindset that we need to be on. And is this going to be a minor change for you in your life? I'm telling you, no. It is going to be a radical change to your life. Ask my wife. We joke about this all the time. We look back at the last 5 years, and it doesn't even pale in comparison to everything else that has happened in our life. God wants to change us, and He's doing that, and He wants to use us to change a culture that doesn't know Christ. Question, I want you to talk about this at your table. How are you right now, or if you're going out on a church plant, how will you function as a missionary where you live, work, and play? Just chat about that at your table, some thoughts. And if you're in a church right now and you're not going out, that's okay. Just think of, okay, currently, missionally, where am I at? Where you live, work, and play. Talk about that at your table. We'll come back in a few minutes. All right, we'll pull it back together here. I don't mean to cut you off, but we want to keep going here. Again, a lot of what this is designed to do is to try and stir up either maybe some dead memories or some dead emotions, or bring about new ideas to light the fire, if you will. So we're talking about focus, right? Of kind of dialing down a little bit deeper. We could do a 2-day seminar just on focus alone. One thing that I want to just share too, that was instilled in our minds and our hearts when we first went to plant High Plains, some factors that defined our focus from the very beginning. And one of those factors was that we were gonna fully engage evangelism. But we weren't going to focus, as some people do, we weren't going to focus on just the decisions. Our primary focus was going to be on making disciples. true, genuine followers of Jesus Christ. And even better than that, we were going to, along the way, train them to be disciples who make disciples themselves as well. So yes, the decisions, are they important? Yes. We're going to talk more about this as we go. Every believer in this room, at some point, God made you make a decision. Yes, the decision is important. But as far as a church, as a missionary, as an ambassador, I would submit to you that we need to focus on making disciples. Or what we're doing, does it contribute to the mission of making disciples? In that realm, in that vein, we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing church. There's lots of church out in rural Colorado. Rarely do we ever encounter somebody that doesn't have a church experience of some way, shape, or form or other. There is a small segment out there, especially the very, very young Latinos, that some of them have never even set foot in a church before. That's a little bit of an exception. We've discovered this through our vacation Bible schools. I'll get to that here in a bit. But we didn't want to do church. And it's not that we had some sort of, 21st century new way of doing things or anything like that. It wasn't that at all. It's what is the focus? We as missionaries, as ambassadors, we wanted to be the church. Just to show people changed lives, transformed lives that are different. And why are you people here? The third thing that was a factor for us up front was that regardless of whether we were 6 months old or 5 years old, that we would be focused on mission and not just maintenance. And that's gotten really hard for us in the last few months. We just moved into our third meeting place, our second building. We've got a lot more room now. We got extra rooms for the kids, and we got all this extra stuff now. And it's really easy for us to slip into maintenance mode and start doing church. Just 2 weeks ago, I had been saying this over and over and over again. And so finally, late on a Saturday night, I had the Holy Spirit spiritual 2x4 upside my forehead. So I put a sign on the inside of the front door, on the inside of the back door. There's only 2 doors in our building. And it says, you walk through this door and you're walking onto the mission field. We've got to, even though we're 5 years old, we have got to stay on mission. Otherwise, we just start doing church. We just become another one of the religious institutions, the Sunday morning book club that's prevalent all throughout rural America. And we don't see changed lives, and we don't see the kingdom expanded one bit. And we wanted to be, and we talked a lot about this in going into the new building, that the church is the people of God, not the place of God. So even regardless of what stage we're in this mission, early, going out the door, 5 years old, 20 years old, or whatever, let's be on mission. Let's be the people of God and not the place of God. So just some thoughts there on a focused passion that we would have. The second thing is reaching the culture, right? Actually understanding who it is that we've been sent to engage. Who can give me a textbook or near textbook definition of exegete? To pull out? Anybody want to add to that? Okay, the official definition I found was a critical explanation or interpretation of a text. Right? I think we agree on that, right? And I think most of everybody in the Crossway Chapel Network, we love exegesis, we love expository teaching, we love to see the text exactly for what it is. I think it's the exact same thing with understanding who it is that we're called to reach. We are to explain or actually critically interpret who are these people. And I was born and raised in Colorado. I spent my summers haying and working horses and pigs and all of that. Stephanie and I lived out there for 5 years before the church was planted. But we didn't know the people. We didn't know them hardly at all. We had to spend a lot of time trying to understand them, to align ourselves and our passions and our desires, the way we talk, the way we eat, the way we dress, everything like that, with the very people that God has called us to bring the gospel to. One common mistake, and this is a mistake that we definitely made when we went out, is arriving in a community with a plan already set in stone in your head. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I've read all the church planning books. I've watched the videos. I've taken the boot camp. I know exactly what I'm going to do. It's a huge mistake. Go out with plans, yes, but be completely open for those plans to get turned on their head by the Holy Spirit and let Him guide you exactly to the persons that He wants you to reach and exactly how as well. In the U.S. military special operations community, one of our jobs was to build a rapport with the indigenous people, to actually go in there and live with them, to create long-term relationships, long before the war ever came, long before the conflict was ever there. We were to dig deep in there, and we found, and some guys weren't really good at it, because the indigenous people, even though we could sometimes not even speak their language, they could sense our heart. They knew whether we really wanted to be there or not. There was a young Afghan boy that I was explaining to him. He asked me one day through the interpreter, "Why are you here?" And I just told him the story. I told him about my wife that I'd left behind. I told him about the new puppy that I had just gotten and that I hadn't seen. I showed him some pictures of my puppy. And I told him about my life back in America. And he was flabbergasted. Why would you leave all of that to come to our war-torn country? I explained to him why I was there, to help, to build the country so that he would be able to have a wife one day and a puppy that they wouldn't eat. And I mean that they would have a future and this country would stand on its own and evil would be put back at bay. Now, in our job, technology is great for movies and for Call of Duty video games and all of that, but in reality, it's the human element. The human element, that's what determines what actually happens. You can have the predators and all the satellites and all the technology and the lasers and all of that, and that helps. But that human element is the only thing I have found that will actually create any sort of long-lasting effect in that area. And certainly, I would submit to you, in the gospel sense, the long-lasting effect in the world. Let me have you go back to your table here. I want you to, 4 simple questions. Think about the people that God has called you to. And answer, just throw around some answers here at your table. First of all, who are the people? What are they like? What do they do for work? And what do they do for fun? Just chat about that at your table real quick. Take a few minutes. All right, I hope you can keep these kind of conversations going long after today, but we'll kind of pull it back together here. Maybe when you heard those questions, you thought about, I really don't know. I'm not exactly sure. Is it just all of Fort Collins? Is it just all of northern Colorado? I'm not exactly sure who those people are. Let me submit to you this. Before you go and plant that church, before you launch that church publicly, I would submit to you, and preferably do this with the entire team, whoever's going with you. Completely submerge yourself inside of those people in any way, shape, or form that you can, and especially live with them. Live in the community. One of the mistakes that we made, we had a few folks that it took a little bit longer for them to get out of Fort Collins or out of Loveland, wherever they were living, and out to the area into Alt. One was a short sale on a house, and there was another job thing or something like that. And those people will tell you today, they were completely ineffective and incredibly frustrated that they didn't live in the community that they were called to minister to. When you go and you submerge yourself, learn their expressions. I gave a sermon a couple weeks ago, and I gave it an illustration. I don't even remember what it was, but there was a visitor there who wasn't from the area, and he laughed, he chuckled, because I said that Peter, on his second sermon in Acts chapter 3, he just grabs both triggers and gives them both barrels. And he thought that was the funniest thing in the world, right? Out where we are, it's not funny. It's like, okay, I get it, right? But to other cultures, so what are their expressions? How do they communicate? What is their language? Maybe you have a foreign language in your in your community. We're trying to more and more engage the Hispanic culture out there. And I have to dig out my old junior high school Spanish book and try and remember some of the phrases that we had when we were on mission trips, but learn their language, study their humor, eat their food that you did today, listen to their stories. In all of this, hear this, it takes time. You got to submerge yourself in there and give it time, doing real life with them every single day, because you can't learn this stuff overnight. Before we launched the church, this was our mindset and our mission, our heart. We wanted to know the people. Out there in rural Colorado, every town has at least one or two big festivals or some sort of town event every single year. So we sat down and we mapped out every single 5 different cities, 5 different towns, every single event that was going to go on. And we went to every one of them. And we had a booth and we had a free drawing. You could, if you're an adult, you could, so you're not going to probably get this, but out there was a huge hit. So if you're an adult, you could sign up for a drawing, and you'd either win a dozen farm fresh eggs for a year and a church member would deliver that dozen every single week. By the way, every single person who won the eggs came to Christ and is either in the church still today or has gone on to be at another Christian church. A case of shotgun shells. So this is the second year, actually, I'll be honest, right? The guys were all saying, the non-believing guys were saying, yeah, we don't want eggs, we got chickens at home. So we threw a case of shotgun shells in, it was your choice. Boom, all of a sudden now we got even more names and email addresses on the list. But we went to every single Nun Days, alt food festivals, Severance Day, we went to every single one of them and try to understand, this is before the church was ever even launched, just to understand the people. And so that we would submerge ourselves in there and understand the culture, the language, the food, and all of that. One of the mistakes that we also made in trying to, and we kind of overthought this. We learned in all these prayer walks and with all these outreaches and everything, we started getting the sense that people really identified a church with a town. So in other words, if the church was in Alt and I lived in Pierce, I can't go to that church because that's Alt's church. I need to go to a church in Pierce. There's one left, I think, maybe 2. But, it was pretty slim pickings. And so we determined we are not going to put the church inside of any city limits. It's going to be in the county. That way, we're going to dodge that whole thing. Man, were we so wrong in that. And God literally forced us to stay in Alt, and we are a regional church, and we're not identified as a church in Alt. In fact, usually people say it's the church in Nunn because that's where I live, and they've more associated with that. But I would say at least 80%, maybe 90% of the people that go to High Plains Harvest don't live in Alt. They come from all over this entire region because that's who we reached out to. As we go through this and we get deeper and deeper into it, actually even before we launched the church, we really set out to, and we're convicted to really develop relationships with people, but develop them around the purpose. And there was no trickery or bait and switch or anything like that. But whoever was on the launch team, whatever we were personally passionate about, what we really liked to do, we were going to try and develop relationships in those areas so that we might get the opportunity to be able to share the gospel. You guys see it right here at the crossing, right? Why does Aaron play hockey? Now that he doesn't fight anymore on the ice, right? He plays hockey, right, to develop relationships with a purpose, right? I joined the Alt Business Association. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been a business guy, and I joined the Business Association so that I could develop these relationships with the purpose. One guy told us before we planted, look, don't start a bike club. If you like biking, join the bike club. Go find the bike club wherever it is in your mission field and go join that. That's the mentality that was instilled in us. And part of that too was, and maybe you don't know, maybe there isn't a bike club out there, right? There's also another concept, you've probably heard this before, of fishing pools, right? We're all made fishers of men now, right? What are the fishing pools that are out there? Well, they're all over the place. Community sports programs, whatever it may be, junior high, high school, something like that. Maybe music, band, or arts. Maybe that's your deal. And there's something in the community that you can go and be a part of and invest in to develop those relationships with a purpose. At schools have all kinds of volunteer programs that you can get associated and tied into. Maybe it's a health club or gym. Look at Pastor Dan over at Windsor, right? That guy, he's passionate about CrossFit. How do you know? Because he takes pictures of himself and puts it all over Facebook like every other CrossFitter does, right? And I say that to him to his face, and Dan zinged me at the last men's retreat, so he's not here, so I get to ambush him. But Dan is passionate about, and when you talk to Dan and you find out about the non-believers in his life that are asking about the gospel or struggling with eternity or those sorts of things, where are those people coming from? From the CrossFit gym that he invests in, and he's developed relationships with people there. Maybe, you have a babysitting opportunity. Develop a relationship there. School athletic booster programs. Maybe it's the city government. All kinds of citizen committees and things like that you can dive into and be a part of. I also think it's very important, we did this at the beginning and it has paid off in spades, is building relationships with other churches. Now, there are some churches that I have not built a relationship with the Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall in Alt, okay? I'm a sinner, right? Sue me. But there are other churches out there, while not exactly like us, and maybe wouldn't buy into the Crossway way of doing things or DNA, but they're close, and they're doing good work, and they love Jesus, and we can partner with them. We started our neighbor-to-neighbor share house, which is a food pantry, clothing, household goods, all of this. We're open every Saturday for 2 hours. There's no qualification. You can come. Whatever you say that you need is yours. You can have it. There's no charge for it. They had, I don't know if you know this or not, if I shared this with you guys, but they, in the same location, in the same building, over the last 15 years, 2 other organizations have tried doing a food pantry or something like that, and they've all failed within 3 months. We're going on our 4th year now. In the first quarter of 2015, we served 99 individual families. And we have seen people, we don't see outright conversions and decisions right there in the middle of the little grocery store thing that we've set up. But we have a non-English speaking family who comes to High Plains every single Sunday. They say they love the music. Their 12-year-old son who speaks English, interprets the sermons to them. But they come every single Sunday. One of our ladies asked the mom in Spanish, "Why do you keep coming when you don't understand the language?" They said, "We know that God is here, and these people have continued to serve us day in and day out, week after week. And it's not just the share house. It's in other ways as well, too." But with these other churches, we want to respect the differences. But we also, when you go into a community, make it absolutely clear that you are not there to shuffle sheep. You're not there to, as one man said, build a really nice cookie jar, make it all fancy and colorful and everything, and then go start stealing cookies from everybody else's cookie jar, fill your cookie jar up, and then say, "Hey, look at our awesome cookie jar." Right? That's not the business that we're in. Tell people, if you are connected to a local church, stay there. Invest in that church. Build it and make it stronger. Make it clear to all the community, the government, and everybody around that you are not there to pull people out of other churches just because you're the newest thing and you've got the hippest music. Make that really clear. There's a church out in Alt called Living Hope Community Church, and we're not, Pastor Tim and I joke around. He's a Wesleyan, I'm a Calvin. We joke around about that. But we share in the share house. That's a co-ministry that we do with them. Vacation Bible School every single Sunday or summer reaches out to the entire region, free to all kids, no charge to anyone. And these 2 churches partner together to do that together. And then meeting with key leaders. I can't stress this enough. When I grew up, the only time I ran, it was from police. I had no desire to ever be a police chaplain. And when we got to Alt, there was a police officer sitting on the side, actually Brian Pettit, who goes to Mountain View now. He's a state trooper now. He used to be a police officer in Alt. He was out there running a speed trap on 14, and we had just got done doing the walk in the streets and praying and talking to people and all that. And I saw the cop car there, and I just walked up to him and I just said, "Hey, this is who we are. This is what we're doing. And can I get your police chief's name to see if there's any way the church might be able to serve the police department? We've got this food pantry and, all of this and everything like that." And so he gave it to me, and I asked him, I said, "So I'd also like to meet your chaplain to see how we might be able to serve you in that realm." And he said, "Well, we don't have a chaplain." A police department that doesn't have a chaplain? You're getting shot at and there's no one there to guide you spiritually? He said, "No, we've never had a chaplain. In the history of Alt, the police department has never had a chaplain." So I just went to the police chief and I said, "Hey, I'm not a cop, but I've shot some guns a couple times, but, can I help in this area?" And boom, guess who got made a chaplain? And then I get to have the whole police department up to my house, to my range, and we do a nighttime shoot and everything like that, and I conduct training for them, and we start developing this relationship. Guess who in the city of Alt, guess if a visitor is traveling through in the snowstorm and they get stranded, guess who the police call? The church. When the city government has somebody that their weeds are too tall and they don't want to go and write them a $100 code enforcement ticket, guess who they call? The church. And we go over there and we ask if we can mow their weeds for them and cut them down and all this. So you start building this rapport with the government. And as Scripture talks about, people, men of peace, start coming out of the woodwork, all for the glory and for God's mission. Lastly, and this is probably the most important point, is keeping the main thing, proclaiming the gospel. Everything that I just described, all of that goes alongside and behind the gospel. Think of it this way. All of these, the mercy ministries, the helping ministries, the serving the community, all of that is done to commend the gospel. This morning when I walked in and Eric told me, "Man, Aaron preached the paint off the walls this morning," right? I didn't know what the message was. I didn't know what the gospel was, but somebody commended the message that he heard. That's exactly the way we need to look at service, mercy, all of engaging the culture, all of that. It goes along to commend the gospel, the proclamation of the gospel. Remember, we are not trying to draw people out of the community. We're not trying to rob the community that already exists. Our plan, God's plan, is to inject the gospel into that existing community. The community that's already there, God wants a virus inside that community. A virus that will spread like wildfire, and it will transform people for the glory of God. And so it's not an either or. And we've had some trouble with this at Mountain View, or not Mountain View. I don't know, maybe you have had trouble with this at Mountain View. We certainly have had trouble with this at High Plains, and I praise my brothers in the network for helping us through this. But we had an individual who came who, things like, we built a demolition derby car. The men's ministry at I did it again. Can you go away so I don't see you anymore? Because that's every time I look at you, that's the words that pop into my head. Out there, so the biggest event of all the entire year is the Greeley Independence Stampede, right? That's the mother of them all. The only bigger one is to go up to Cheyenne to Frontier Days. And we kept trying to get in there, and there wasn't really a good way for us to do something. And so Brian Gray and I from the very beginning said, wouldn't it be awesome if we could build a demolition derby car and put it in the demo? It's the largest, bigger than any rodeo that exists in all of Greeley. The demolition derby is sold out 3 months before the stampede ever even happens. Finally, one year we got to build a demolition derby car, and church's name all over it, scriptures all over it, everything like this. By God's grace, we got 5th out of 12 cars. Our driver was not killed. He would have gone to heaven we talked about that in the pits. But we got to engage a culture. Folks, if you have never been to the pits of a demo derby race, right? Full of summer teeth. Some are here, some are there, right? I mean, and literally people were coming up saying, there's a church that has a demolition derby car. The director of all of Colorado for the demolition derby said, I have never heard of a church ever entering a car in a race in Colorado, ever. And we got to sit in the pits, and literally, me and James had the Bibles open on the hood of the demolition derby car. They let us pick our own number. And so we're sitting there thinking, okay, what number do we do? And they said, can we put a colon in the number? right? They said, you can do whatever you want. Who cares, right? Okay, we pick 146, right? So it was the John 14:6 car, right? And we're painting the number on the car in the pits. And this guy comes up, I kid you not. He says, you got that wrong. What do you mean wrong? It says it's supposed to be John 3:16. Okay, that's a good verse, but have you ever heard of John 14:6? No, I haven't. Reach into the demo derby car, pull out the Bible, and right there we get to share the gospel, and right there in the pits. Meanwhile, our church members are up in the stands handing out free foam earplugs. Because if you've never been to a demolition derby car, it's incredibly loud. And the kids come and people don't know how loud it is, right? And so we're handing out free. And when our car came out, I was down sort of in the pits and I look up in the stands and I see our free earplugs were green with yellow string attached to them. And I look throughout the whole stadium and there's green earplugs with yellow strings all along. And every person handed out a gospel track and a pair of earplugs. Gospel track and a pair of earplugs, right? We went there. Anyway, back on topic. Okay, I'm over. Sorry about that. There are certain individuals who say that that's wrong. That we should be standing on a soapbox on the corner screaming out the gospel, which again, I'm not opposed to. We see examples of that in Scripture. But are we doing both and? Are we engaging the culture? Are we loving people? Are we commending the gospel, showing our transformed life and serving people? Are we commending the gospel that way? And are we also making sure we're proclaiming the gospel in all that we do? I know Eric referenced him before, and I think, Eric, you're still a fan, but I'm still a fan of Mark Driscoll. If you're not, then I'm sorry, I am. I pray for him every day. Mark Driscoll said way back when, this is a book that Kevin had me read in Pastors Institute, he said it's imperative that Christians be like Jesus by living freely within the culture as missionaries who are as faithful to the Father and His gospel as Jesus was in His own time and place. What did Jesus do? That's the WWJD, right? Are we serving like Jesus? Are we loving like Him? Are we sacrificing and enduring like Him? Are we preaching like Him? Are we blessing like Him? Are we giving like Him? This is all about Jesus, and this is Luke 4:18. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because He anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of the sight to the blind and to set free those who are oppressed. That's the mission. Proclaim, set free. We don't do it, He does. But we're called, Romans 10, to do this. Why God would choose us is just, how then will they call on Him in whom they have not believed? How will they believe in Him who have not heard? How will they hear without a preacher? How will they preach unless they are sent? Just as it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news of good things. Everyone has a story. And evangelism, proclamation, sharing, whatever label you want to put onto it, this is a public deal. Don't believe the lie, because especially in rural America, right? You don't talk about religion out there. It's a public deal. Remember Peter in his first and second gospel sermon. Peter went from a coward to being filled with the Holy Spirit and publicly proclaiming to thousands of people the gospel. Take this to yourself personally. If you don't think that sharing the gospel, or maybe you think that you've been told that it's imposing your beliefs on somebody. Again, it's not imposing your beliefs on somebody. If you're speaking the true gospel, it's just fact. You're just putting it forth. But just think about this. Somebody went public for you. At some point in your life, somebody decided it wasn't going to be private. I'm going to speak it publicly to Eric. And look at what God did with that. Now, God wants Eric to go public with the same fact. That's all this mission is. That's the essence of proclaiming. And I know, some people say, well, is Jason Hartman in here? He'll be in the next one. Good. But I love Jason. Jason's a great brother of mine. And some people would say, Jason said at one time, if you believe, it is what you believe. You shouldn't have to be taught how to do it. I totally agree with that. However, people need encouragement. People need maybe just a couple tools, right, to help them in that. This last, just a few weeks ago, Ashley Denton and I went to Nepal. Right after the first earthquake, we were in the middle of the second one. And we got the opportunity to sit on the top of a building one night with a guy that Ashley had developed a relationship with 2 years before, a Nepali. Actually, he's now a doctor. He's a radiologist. And we got to sit on the top of his house and drink tea and eat bananas. His Hindu mom in her whole garb and the red dot and everything was sitting right there listening to it. And we just had a conversation with him. And I watched what Ashley did, and it was amazing to see how this man just transformed just in the friendly discussion that Ashley was having with him. And Ashley goes through, and I'll give you an acronym here in a second, but Ashley goes through, and he's talking about the gospel, and he's sharing about Jesus, and he says, yeah, and then he was crucified, and he on this, for our sins, and then 3 days later he rose from the dead, and then he went and ascended to heaven. The guy goes, whoa, wait a second. He rose from the dead? I knew about the whole cross thing, right? I didn't know he raised from the dead. But it was this whole conversation that Ashley was having with him as a friend that Ashley was able to share the complete and total gospel with him, not in a confrontational way. Afterwards, when we're walking home through the streets of Poker, I asked Ashley, I said, what just happened there? And we were both pumped, by the way. And he said, a long time ago, somebody taught me an acronym, and the acronym is HOPE. And he said, this is what I remember when I'm having conversations with this. History. Tell me a little bit about your story. And I remember that's what he told the guy. He said, hey, tell me about your background. What you religious, grow up in a Hindu country and, things like this. And then opportunities. Have you ever had the opportunity to learn about the Bible or explore God or religion? I'd love to hear about that. And this guy just shared, yeah, this is what I know and what I've experienced and this. And it's kind of funny. He's like, I'm done with Hinduism. There's too many rules. Eat this, don't eat that, can't do that. He said, I'm done with Hinduism. And then the P is for personal testimony. This is when Ashley just told the story of his life, his transformation story. Woven through that, obviously, was the gospel. And then at the very end, he said, would you like to experience what I have known, what I've come to know in Jesus? And so the agreement was that this guy from the other side of the world, Ashley would send him a link, and this guy would read Ashley's blog. And so now they're having a conversation on the other side of the world about Jesus and the gospel and salvation just because of a friendly conversation. I'll wrap it up with this. I got some more, but in this, let me just leave this with you. We don't do any of this in our power. We can't figure any of it out in our power. We can't become great church planners or whatever in our own power. It is only by our total reliance and dependence on the Holy Spirit. Remember the Great Commission, right? I won't read it again. We're called to go and make disciples of all nations. Mark 16:15, go and proclaim the gospel to all of creation. And I'll just leave you with this. Acts 1:8, you've heard it before. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you shall be my witnesses both in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and even the remotest part of the earth. And every single one of those cultures needs to hear the gospel. Amen? Let's pray. Father, thank you for our time together. And Lord, please teach us, guide us, and lead us, Holy Spirit, on how to be the missionaries and ambassadors that you've called us to be. It's in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.